personal to me. I've lost my mother to cancer. It was just 2 weeks after my mother's passing, and I attended the first ResearcHERS event. The event showed me that sisterhood and unity among women.
ResearchHERS is a movement because of the importance of community, having those friendships between people who are so passionate about cancer and who are so inspiring.
We all have a common bond as women and we support one another. One of the biggest challenges is just obtaining research funds in order to conduct our research.
Funding is the vital part of our careers as academic scientists.
In my research, I've worked with refugee and immigrant populations and trying to get them to get screened for breast and cervical cancer. I think it's important to reach underserved populations, and so the money that is raised by ResearchHERS is so important to help us to continue to do this work.
We are going to raise money that will help save lives. I'm so excited to raise the funds and help support the next breakthrough in cancer with you.
To my younger generation, I want to say we are all gifted with talents and skills and knowledge and experiences. So take what you know and make the change that you want to see.
We shouldn't give up, and we are not allowed, really, to give up.
We're all bringing so many new things to the table, and accumulation of all these new things is where the answer to cancer lies. That's where we'll find our cure.
Even when we're apart.
We are in this together.
And together, we'll find a cure.
Many thanks for being a part of the ResearchHERS Sisterhood.
Hello, and welcome to the launch of the 2021 ResearchHERS Women Fighting Cancer of Los Angeles. My name is Kelsey Davis, and I am the American Cancer Society's staff lead for the ResearchHERS Los Angeles campaign. We are so happy to be launching this year's campaign with the first conversation in a 3-part speaker series that we're calling Conversations in and Out of the Lab. Today, you'll get a chance to hear from women leading cutting-edge cancer research in Los Angeles. To kick off our program today, it's my pleasure to introduce you all to our virtual MC and award-winning journalist, Carolyn Johnson. Carolyn is the co-anchor of the NBC4 News at 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. Carolyn is known for her reporting on health and science and has worked both in front of and behind the camera, reporting and producing numerous programs and specials with more than 20 years of journalism and production experience. We are so thrilled to have Carolyn joining us today.
Thank you so much, Kelsey, and good morning to everyone. It's really my pleasure to be here with you. Believe it or not, this is actually my first sort of Zoom meeting. I have spent most of the time during the pandemic going into the station. So exciting to be here with you in this format. It's also really an honor for me to be here today because cancer became part of my life 5 years ago. I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then during the pandemic, my mom actually received a very similar diagnosis to mine. She also had a lumpectomy. I think it points to the fact that our cancers were caught very early, thanks in part to such great research that has happened over the last several decades. And I'm truly grateful to my wonderful team of female-led doctors at Cedars-Sinai for leading me through my cancer journey. And of course, to the research for giving me the options from surgery to medications to eradicate my cancer and hopefully to keep it from returning. So you can certainly understand why I am grateful to take part in this important program, raising awareness and funds for women-led cancer research. In that opening video, we heard how women have made invaluable contributions to cancer research, and yet they are consistently underrepresented when it comes to research leadership. So the ResearchHERS campaign wants to change that. And together we can support women-led cancer research, bolster the careers of women researchers, and make sure there's a more robust pipeline of female leaders in cancer research. So again, thank you all for joining us today and for being part of this important movement. First, a special thanks to this year's sponsors: Culver City Honda, a silver sponsor; Cedars-Sinai, the gold sponsor of this year's campaign, and the official sponsor of today's launch event. Thank you for your dedication to the mission and funding of women in research. And of course, you have the chat box where you can show our sponsors some love, and you can use that chat box to react, of course, throughout this presentation. Today's event, Conversations in and Out of the Lab, is the first in a three-part speaker series. These events are an opportunity to hear from women who are leading cutting-edge research right here at institutions throughout LA County. And today we're highlighting 4 cancer researchers from Cedars-Sinai. At the end of the program, we're going to share some details of the dates and topics for the upcoming 2 speaker series session. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce you to ResearchHERS of Los Angeles 2021 Chair, Dr. Karen Rehkamp.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I'm Karen Rehkamp, Professor of Medicine, Division Director of Medical Oncology, and Associate Director for Clinical Research at Cedars-Sinai Cancer. My career in lung cancer began at an exciting time, just as scientists were making the first discoveries about the use of targeted therapies in lung cancer, which has significantly changed our understanding of this deadly disease and opened doors to new effective treatments. My work explores targeted therapies for non-small cell lung cancer, as well as immunotherapy, which can harness a patient's own immune system to attack cancer within the body. Progress has been made with these therapies, and I am fortunate to investigate these to improve the lives of my patients. I study novel therapies for my patients and offer clinical trials that have resulted in improved survival for lung cancer patients, even in those diagnosed with advanced disease. And this benefit can be seen in the people I see in my clinic every day. A recent patient returned who has benefited from new treatments that have been developed over the past decade. She's been living with her life with advanced lung cancer for more than 10 years. In the past, she would have faced a different, far more dire outcome than she's experiencing today. I'm excited to be a lung cancer researcher at a time when we can clearly measure the strides we're making with a disease that is far less lethal than before because of new discoveries. But much work remains to be done. This disease is expected to kill over 130,000 adults in the US this year, including over 60,000 women. Medical scientists like myself face a gap in understanding about gender and disease, including disparities in survival outcomes among male and female cancer patients. The value of women's innovations, insights, and voices harnessed to help close that gap cannot be overstated. That's why the work we're doing here through ResearchHERS to fund and support women in cancer research is so essential.
Dr. Rehkamp, thank you. And forgive me for skipping the longer introduction I had of you. As I said, I'm a little bit new to this and I'm sort of manipulating a couple screens. I know you did really clearly walk us through, but I just wanted to, again, say that you are one of our distinguished panelists today. And of course, female-led research is a top priority of Cedars-Sinai. So let me introduce you now to the rest of our panelists. Dr. Jane Figueredo, Director of Community and Population Health Research at Cedars-Sinai. Dr. Kate Lawrenson, an American Cancer Society funded researcher focusing on the non-coding genome and the biology of ovarian cancer, also at Cedars-Sinai. And Dr. Jae-Young Kim, translational scientist in cancer biology and therapeutics at Cedars-Sinai. You can read their full bios on the Los Angeles ResearchHERS website, but right now let's take a closer look at the type of research they do.
Hello, I'm Karen Rehkamp, Professor of Medicine, Division Director for Medical Oncology, and Associate Director for Clinical Research at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I'm a thoracic medical oncologist, and I do translational and clinical research on novel therapies for non-small cell lung cancer and other thoracic malignancies. The majority of my work has been focused on targeted therapies and understanding resistance to targeted therapies,
and immunotherapy and improving outcomes for patients by harnessing their own immune system to attack cancers. Both these areas have made a substantial impact for patients with non-small cell lung cancer and small cell lung cancer. We treat most patients who have non-small cell lung cancer with targeted therapies or immunotherapies. And recently we've learned that these therapies have actually led to an improved survival over the years, even for people who get diagnosed with advanced disease, which is incredibly important and a landmark that we haven't achieved until recently.
Hi, hello, my name is Dr. Jaeyoung Kim. I'm a translational scientist in cancer biology and therapeutics at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I have broad background in medical science and specific expertise in signal transduction and molecular biology. As a PI and professor of surgery, my research has concentrated on furthering our understanding of mechanism and treatment of urological cancers. In particular, my academic career and clinical research focused on how to use cutting-edge cellular, molecular, and computational AI tools to better understand the GI tract pathophysiology and cancer.
The research of my laboratory focuses primarily on ovarian cancer, and we're interested in understanding how gene expression gets disordered and dysregulated during the development of these tumors. And so we spend most of our time studying tumors and also the precursor cells from which these tumors arise to really understand that process by which cells become transformed. And so this means that we use a lot of fun genomics technologies, be it bulk profiling, looking at genes, looking at the genome, looking at the epigenome, so the non-genetic contributors to gene expression. And we will do that analysis both in bulk cells but also in single cells that we have isolated from specimens that patients will donate to research. And we're interested in the long term to understand how we can use this information to find new ways to detect ovarian cancers earlier or even prevent them altogether. But in scenarios where we're not able to prevent or detect those tumors early, can we find new ways to treat these cancers more effectively? And so our idea is that if we can find places in the cell where we have critical dependencies and the cell's really vulnerable to a certain gene being disrupted, that will give us a really potent way to treat these tumors more effectively.
I'm a cancer epidemiologist. My research program focuses on understanding the intersections between the biological, environmental, and lifestyle behavioral aspects of cancer control, survivorship, and disparities, particularly in colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer is a common cancer, and it's also one of the most preventable cancers because we can modify our risk level by changing our behaviors. I spent the last decade building new population-based and clinic-based studies in the US and globally. These studies have made tremendous progress in understanding the pathogenesis of colorectal cancer, the underlying causes of ethnic racial disparities, particularly in the Hispanic Latinx community, and the development of tailored strategies to improve cancer prevention, response to treatment, and clinical outcomes.
I'm excited to be a woman researcher in cancer and lung cancer, and it's important to continue specific research that focuses on women and gender differences, but also to support women who are in cancer research.
I believe that women-led cancer research can lead greater motivation focused to understand the gender-specific cancer and mechanism. I'm so proud to serve as president of the Korean American Women in Science and Engineering (KWISE), which is the largest science society representing a diverse group of women scientists with the Korean-based heritage. KWISE lead cancer research community effort to engage female high school and undergraduate students in cancer science. We organize annual STEM fair, science summer camp, provide mentoring regularly, and help their career development in STEM field, especially cancer research. As a mentor and advisor to underrepresented group, my efforts have been focused on better preparation of female students to be more active scientists in an increasingly diverse society. I would like to continue to take the active leadership role in fostering diversity and promote women's lead cancer research. I will continue to pursue funds to actively run science programs, community STEM fair for girls, cancer, career boot camp for female graduate students, something like that, and to provide a mentoring workshop from such funding for young scientists and engineers to encourage them in cancer research career.
I'm very passionate about supporting the careers of all junior scientists and particularly women. I think right now more than ever women need support to develop their careers and sustain their careers, particularly those with caregiving responsibilities who have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And this can come through many different avenues, be it sources of grants for women scientists at various stages of their career and other opportunities for their science to be showcased.
As a woman in science, I know the challenges we all face. Many of us experience stereotypes and microaggressions. We face stress, pressure, and fears of conforming to a path of career advancement while also at the same time making difficult choices about family planning and child rearing. Only with more women sitting at the table who bring the diverse perspectives and experiences of women scientists, and with efforts to grow involvement of women in science, will we work to overcome these challenges.
Wow, what a great lineup of panelists we have today. And I want to remind you that everyone in the audience is welcome to ask questions. You can add them to the chat box and Kelsey will be monitoring that. We'll get to some of those questions a bit later for you. But let's start with Dr. Figueiredo. Can you share with us a little bit more about your journey into cancer research?
Thank you, Caroline. Well, my journey into cancer research was not a straight one. In fact, I started as an engineer. And it was during engineering that I had the opportunity to do an internship at SickKids Hospital in Toronto. And it was there that I experienced what clinical research was all about. And I knew then that what I wanted to do was conduct studies that had a clinical significance, that answered important clinical questions. And so I enrolled in my master's in epidemiology. Of course, at the time, I probably didn't really understand what epidemiology was, but now I know everyone knows what an epidemiologist is. And it was a time of great excitement in cancer research because of the discovery of the BRCA1, BRCA2, and MMR genes. And that really established that there was a hereditary basis to colorectal cancer. And not only were there highly penetrant genes, but there were also more common susceptibility genes or variants. And so I spent my master's and PhD really understanding the basis in terms of the susceptibility in terms of breast and colon cancer. And today I lead and participate in a variety of different colorectal cancer studies in the US and globally. And have a real passion for understanding ethnic racial disparities, in particular in the Latinx community.
Very interesting, and such important work you're doing right now as we learn so much more about these things thanks to all the genomic research that's gone on. Dr. Redkamp, you've talked about having several family members who had cancer when you were younger. How did that influence your career path?
So I'd say pretty significantly. When I was young, some of the first memories I have are of two of my aunts who were diagnosed with ovarian cancer and very close to my parents. So I experienced that and didn't understand what they were really going through, but I think it always was a seed in the back of my mind about how challenging it was. And it was a very difficult time. And ovarian cancer is one of the diseases that we have incredible treatments for now. And I still think back and think about how these advances would have helped my aunts who died way too young of cancer. And so that has definitely been a motivation. And my mantra is kind of, we need to do better, and we can do better.
Yeah. And you are doing better, all of you together. Dr. Kim, you too have personal experience with cancer.
Oh yeah, thanks Caroline for asking that. I have actually a long story about it. I am a cancer survivor, and as you know, I am also a cancer researcher. My cancer was diagnosed and cured about 15 years ago when I just started my professional career as assistant professor at Harvard Medical School as cancer scientist, of course. And my life immediately shifted into survival mode from the series of biopsies, a series of imaging and chemotherapies and surgeries to radiation therapy as well. My family and I journeyed through a battle that radically changed the whole our lives. Every battle, as you know, that comes with a team of warriors, in my case, amazing doctors, nurses, supporters, friends, and families. So my experience as cancer survivor helped me a lot to strengthen the calling and mission why I need to work as a cancer researcher. If you ask how cancer affected my life, I must confess that cancer taught me a lot. There are always valuable lessons to be learned through although there are some lessons that are extremely hard to accept in case of cancer diagnosis, but I understand the emotional feeling, depression, suicidal ideation that patient may have at diagnosis and during the whole journey for the treatment. So cancer taught me to express love. Before cancer era, I just assumed my friends and family members all know that I love them so much, but I realized that I did not actually express them much that I love them. Now I tell my loved one very often, sometimes too often, how special they are to me, especially my kids. Another important lesson that I've learned through the cancer is that I am braver and stronger than I ever thought. Cancer also taught me the importance of letting go. And although the cancer is a life-changing disease, it is also a sweet gift for me so that I can survive every day as a cancer researcher at this highly competitive research environment, I think. I believe that cancer survivor and as a cancer survivor and cancer researcher, I believe we will cure cancer together. Here at Cedars-Sinai Cancer Center, we cancer researchers work so hard to fight against more than 60 types of cancer. I believe that we will achieve the goal, cancer cure. It will be faster and efficient with your strong support, of course.
Yes, everyone can rally behind that. We love the sound of that, a cure for cancer. Dr. Lawrenson, what stands out in your mind as the biggest challenge that you faced as a researcher?
I think we're all facing many challenges each day as a woman in science, and as you climb the ladder, you realize there are fewer and fewer female faces around the table, as Jane mentioned. And certainly for me, the biggest transition was becoming a parent and having to readjust all aspects of my life and definitely my career to a huge extent. And I think it's something that we don't talk about enough and make allowances for enough. I know lots of people are even scared to take parental leave, and it's so important for people's health, both mothers and fathers, to allow themselves time to adjust to, the new additions in your family. And one thing I did notice was that, after I came back after having my first kid, and I would say, look, I can't do that meeting late because I've got to go home. Suddenly people were more comfortable saying that they had their own commitments and they, needed to, make accommodations for those. And I think it's important that we allow people to do that, because there is generally a culture of, you got to work every hour you're awake. But the truth is that you can still be just as productive if you're more efficient with your time. And, there are ways that we can help mentor people to achieve that kind of efficiency and prioritizing properly so that you can be productive, but have a life outside the lab as well. And it's a bit kind of controversial to say that. Sometimes it's hard to say that, but I think it's important for everyone's well-being that we do have those conversations, in addition to all of the other types of career development that we are really passionate about supporting at Cedars.
Yeah, and Dr. Figueiredo, you touched on that as well, talking about the importance of having the conversations about child planning and child rearing. Do you share some of the same thoughts with Dr. Lawrenson?
I do. I echo what she said, and I really believe that there needs to be a fresh, more realistic conversation among both men and women who are sitting at the table, who have real power to evoke change and who are willing and able to speak up, because these situations affect many of us. And there are many highly accomplished women who are denied equal access to opportunity because they make or need to make other choices.
Yeah. And Dr. Lawrenson, you mentioned too, though, as these conversations start, I imagine these impact men as well. And then maybe men that sort of, it all shifts, like, well, wait a second, my family, I need to figure out how to better prioritize things. But Dr. Lawrenson, can you also share a little bit about your journey into cancer research and what it means to you to be funded by the American Cancer Society?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. I really can't understate how valuable it is for us at the early stages of our career to have support from the ACS. It really does open up opportunities. The project that ACS funded for us, we were talking about in my lab meeting yesterday. There's a PhD student working on that project, and she's found this highly specific protein modification that we're only seeing in cancer cells. And that finding we just wouldn't have made without the support of ACS. And, we also know that it's very hard for early stage investigators to get funding from other places like the NIH, like the DoD. And it's just difficult to get those dollars without having preliminary data that would take 10 years to generate. And so we really can't underestimate enough how much of a difference it makes to us to be able to be funded by the ACS to get those projects off the ground. Yeah.
Dr. Rehkamp, what stands out to you as your greatest joy or accomplishment as a researcher?
Thank you for that question. So, it's really hard to pick out one moment. I would say that there's kind of accumulation of moments that mostly have to do with the patients that I take care of and see on a day-to-day basis. One of my patients, I don't see too many patients with lung cancer who are young, but I have one patient who was able through surrogacy to have children, which is a remarkable experience to have helped somebody to become a parent when they thought it was impossible. And so that stands out as incredibly happy memory. And then the other piece is that people are really living longer because of the research that we do. And because I've been doing this for long enough now, I can see that trajectory and I can see where we've started. Learning about targeted therapy in lung cancer specifically, and now 15 years later, we actually see longer survival. And that is a daily reminder in my clinic, because I will say that when I first started, many people I saw with advanced lung cancer weren't there 2 years later.
Wow.
Now I have patients and I have long-term relationships with my patients because patients are living longer, doing better, and living their lives with cancer. And so the other piece of it is just the happiness that people can live with cancer, and that a diagnosis of cancer is not just a death sentence, and that people's lives are changing and they can be fully engaged in their lives and do meaningful things in their lives, even with a diagnosis of cancer.
Yeah, it's so important. I have a friend who's had some struggles for years with cancer, and she approaches it now as more of a chronic disease, is how she thinks of it, and just taking it, day by day, year by year, and onward and upward, and hoping for that eventual cure. Dr. Kim, what advice would you give to young women interested in pursuing this career in research?
Thank you for asking that. I think that is very, very important issues. I was originally trained as a cancer biologist with the focus on pre-cancer and cancer, and I have a passion to fight against cancer. My long-term academic goal is to better understand the normal as well as pathological mechanism for improving patient cancer. So I believe that we can achieve this goal through the better diagnosis and intervention by using various research tools. So I think my effort on this long-term goal was continued from, from Boston to Los Angeles. And I really appreciate a strong support from surgery department and cancer center at Cedars-Sinai. They showed a strong, thoughtful support on women cancer researchers like me for a long time. As PI, I have been committed to taking research results, especially from the lab to the clinic, so that we can directly benefit patients. So like this, I'm a cancer scientist, but also I am a woman who always think about how we can improve this diversity. Absolutely, I have advice for young scientists, especially for young minority female students who seriously consider to be a cancer researcher in the future. From my career in Harvard Medical School, I became involved in many programs for minority students for advancing diversity and reduce disparity. They include the continuing umbrella of research experience at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, I remember. I think this experience had profound influence on me. I'm actively involved in the next generation education for cancer research. I recognize the barriers faced by women and other minority, especially in the female high school students and undergraduate students. They need more support to think about the career as a cancer researcher. As mentor and advisor to underrepresented group, my effort has been focused on better preparation of female students to be more active and more proactive and more successful citizen, women, scientists in an increasing diverse society like this. This aim to encourage female students jump into science, especially health science, especially cancer research. So my humble advice to them, to young women cancer researchers in the future is follow. First of all, find a mentor who has passion to see you grow and willing to guide you in your journey to be cancer researcher. It's very important. And second, go outside your comfort zone of the lab, engage in science outreach, network, and interact with other person. Science is more than working hard at the bench, as you know, and be confident in your ability. And fourth, do not look just for academic job, because there are many exciting opportunities out there in the private sector. Fifth and last, be strong and be ready to juggle between career and family. As a mom of 2 kids myself, I will not pretend that combining a career and family is easy. However, if you prepare well, you will be successful in both fields.
And these are all I wish that somebody had told me that earlier in my career when I was very young. Of this encourage the future women cancer researchers. What do you think, other person?
Yeah, Dr. Kim makes so much sense, and finding that mentor early on, great advice. I want to ask the same question of our other panelists as well. Dr. Figueiredo, let's start with you. What advice would you give to other young women out there who'd like to become researchers?
Well, I mean, I think especially during COVID, or especially since the pandemic, I think what I've realized is that there are challenges that you may not anticipate, that there are, and that you may not be prepared for, and that may be challenging. And so what I would say is that the path may not always be easy, but to forge ahead and to look for people that are supportive and that make time for you. I can think of a lot of people that I've been able to call, or who've called me or sent me a text to ask me how I'm doing. And those moments are really important. And for all of us listening, we need to do that for each other. So, and sometimes we don't have time, but I think it's important to make time, because it's those mentors and supportive colleagues that listen to you, that will care about your career and development and will advocate for you. I think sometimes we forget to nominate that other woman, that other colleague. And it's when we all do it together that there will be more women who are sitting at the table.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I think, for all of our careers, indeed. Dr. Reckamp, do you want to weigh in on this one as well?
I would agree with what's been said, and I can't overestimate the importance of mentorship and finding mentors who it's a two-way street, and so they have to give to you and you have to give back, and finding those mentors that can help to support that early part of your career and not being discouraged. And some of the stereotypes with women is that we internalize failures. When we talk about grant funding and submitting manuscripts and things like that, we're more likely to get rejections than approvals. But you have to keep going, and you can't let it be a mar on your own character. You can't let that be an internal piece of you. And so remembering that you put it out there, you get it, you don't get it, you put the next one out there. You have belief in yourself. And so that you can't underestimate the importance of just that persistence and determination and keeping at it. And don't take it personally for the most part. It's not about you. It's the systems are, as we've seen, the systems may be skewed a little bit against moving women forward, but it doesn't mean that you personally are not a good person or not smart enough or not good enough.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's move on now to Dr. Lawrenson. A question has come in on the chat from Diana Jamal. She asks, is there a connection between ovarian cancer and ovarian cysts? Is it possible that an ovarian cyst can form into cancer? And can this be figured out in the early stages?
So most ovarian cysts actually aren't going to be associated with ovarian cancer, thank goodness, because ovarian cysts are quite common. We do know that there is a small subset of women who suffer from endometriosis, which is a benign condition, again, very common, where cells that resemble the cells of the uterus grow outside the uterine cavity. That's a very painful condition associated with infertility. And in a minor subset of ladies with endometriosis, they have a risk of an endometriosis cyst becoming ovarian cancer later in life. But again, that's a very rare occurrence. And unfortunately, we don't know how to detect those cancers early yet. This is a real need for all ovarian cancers, being able to either detect them more early, or one approach that we're very keen to explore is whether we can actually use chemoprevention, which might be a more efficient way to avoid deaths from ovarian cancer.
And I should have mentioned that the question came from one of our 2021 researcher ambassadors. So thank you for that question, Diana. We have another one now. ACS has a goal to improve survivorship, those living well past treatment and the challenges they are facing. What are you seeing in research about improving survivorship, quality or length, for all or more prominent cancers such as colon? Dr. Figueiredo, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. So survivorship is such an important topic. Many individuals are living not only with cancer, they're living a long time after a cancer diagnosis. And there's so much exciting research right now on all kinds of lifestyle interventions, and not only in how to mitigate reoccurrence, but also to improve quality of life. For example, one of the things that I've been studying is cancer-related fatigue. We forget how chemotherapy and some of the anti-cancer treatments are so exhausting and difficult for patients. And so pivoting to understanding how not only do we want to increase people's lives, but we want to improve the quality of their lives and the happiness that they experience after throughout their lives. And so that is work that I know other colleagues are doing, and I think we're making great progress.
Yeah, we are indeed. And while we still have you, I want to ask you, another question came in from Amanda Zook, asking if you could highlight interventions, either behaviorally or those focusing on disparities, that you're particularly excited about when it comes to focusing on your research.
So one of the things that I'm doing right now that I'm really, really excited about, and I talked a little bit about this at the beginning in terms of genetic susceptibility. So we know a lot about different variants that contribute to risk of cancer. And so we have been creating what's known as polygenic risk scores. And what's interesting here is that these models have been largely developed in non-Hispanic white populations. And we can sort of really understand whether someone's at higher or lower risk of cancer using these models. Now, they differ. They are likely to differ across ethnic racial populations, and minorities have been largely excluded from these studies. And so that's where my research and others have tried to make a difference. But what's really interesting is that once we develop these models, we need to understand how they can be used. And one way that they could be used is for screening, tailoring screening. We want to identify those individuals at the highest risk of getting cancer. And for those screenable cancers like colon, breast, lung, cervical, then you could have heightened surveillance. But what's not clear is how patients and providers will interpret scores and how that can be used. And we know that in, for example, the Latinx community, screening is less common. And we need to be more sensitive to how we deploy how we educate people about the use of this if it ever becomes clinically used. And I think that is one area of research that I think is very exciting.
And Dr. Redkamp, you talked about sort of the gap in understanding gender and disease. That sort of blends in with what we're talking about here. Can you expand on that a bit?
Sure. So, our understanding of gender, I think, is kind of in a nascent area right now, and the way that it affects disease and the extent of disease. We know that, for instance, in lung cancer, patterns, even in people who smoke, women who smoke less are more likely to get lung cancer than a man who smokes at that same level. So there are hormonal, environmental, other issues that promote that. We also see in lung cancer more women non-smokers who get lung cancer. And so understanding these aspects and the specifics that gender brings to a cancer diagnosis is incredibly important. And again, I think we're only at the beginning of our understanding of these differences.
Yeah, and when you talk about some of the clinical research that's gone on, a lot of it has been very much focused on men. So are you hoping to broaden that and do some more specific research involving women?
Our focus is always to bring in more women. One area, obviously, in breast and ovarian cancer, that's where we have made the most progress. But I would say that, interestingly enough, often clinical trial participation is more common in women. There's a little more interest and maybe some extra health seeking at this point. And so we have been somewhat successful in increasing women who enter into clinical trials. But it's always a goal to improve that and improve our diversity within our clinical trials.
Okay, wonderful. Well, of course, the future is bright, but we need everyone's support to keep this pipeline of female-led cancer research projects full. So we want to bring Kelsey Davis back in now to share more about the ResearchHERS campaign and how all of you can get involved. Kelsey.
Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you to our amazing researchers from Cedars-Sinai. As we all know, cancer research doesn't begin and end in a lab or over a set of data. It's also focused on helping everyone avoid or survive cancer. Your support through fundraising can make all the difference. The next great cancer discovery could be sitting on a shelf as a grant application right now. During the past few years, we've seen hundreds of women who have signed on as ambassadors from various industries, including business, biotech, academia, the medical and healthcare field, and even high school students. Currently, our 2021 Los Angeles campaign is represented by a diverse group of strong female leaders. Our ambassadors are passionate about women-led cancer research and have joined the movement to raise awareness and critical funds for the American Cancer Society. One of our ambassadors is using her artistic talent to raise funds for her campaign. I would like to share with you a video created by one of our 2021 Los Angeles ResearchHERS ambassadors, Aaliyah Mineta.
Hi, my name is Aaliyah Mineta, and I am an artist, a scientist, a board member, a ResearchHER, and an active volunteer for the American Cancer Society. I'm also a family member to several incredible people who have battled cancer. And so for several years now, I've been incredibly involved in the cancer community. And COVID has put a lot of things on hold, but cancer hasn't stopped. And so I knew that there must be something more that myself and the people around me could do to help patients during this critical time. So after some ideation on ways to give back, I decided in 2020 that I would create an art-centric ResearchHERS campaign where not 5%, not 10%, but 100% of proceeds to my art would be donated to the ResearchHERS movement. And my art took shape in a variety of different forms, from small line drawings, paintings, large-scale commercial murals. It also took form in what some people might term as bioart, which combined my background in biological research and my passion for art. So this type of art were custom pieces made out of things like biological dyes, compressed needles, medical waste, drug labels, scientific processes, you name it, all rendered in this beautiful visual form. And so I found really great inspiration in the ResearchHERS movement, met some really inspiring scientists that ACS funds, and also created some really special art that highlighted themes of survivorship and love and the incredible community that surrounds these patients. So in 2021, I have decided that I'm going to continue my art charity work to support the ResearchHERS movement, and I urge you to get involved. We have some really creative ways to fundraise, and our ACS community is there to help you along the way. So I look forward to working with you and helping to save lives, celebrate lives, and lead the fight to a world without cancer.
We're so lucky to have Aaliyah on board as one of our ambassadors this year. In addition to Aaliyah Mineta, I'd also like to recognize our other current ambassadors, Carolyn Ree, ACS board member and retired CEO of Olive View Hospital. Diana Jamal, a recent graduate student from CSUN. She graduated in cell and molecular biology. Navarre Meridian, a student at USC. Caitlin Carmichael, actress and philanthropist. Nikki Mohajer, a PhD student, medical student at UCI and brand ambassador with Hoka running shoes. And Cynthia Begay, ACS board member, health equity advocate, and ResearchHERS. They are all leaders in their communities who share our passion to fuel the future of cancer research. We have a strong team, but we are looking for more to join us in the fight against cancer. There are many ways to get involved. Donate to ResearchHERS, nominate a powerful candidate, or join as an ambassador and take on the challenge yourself to fund research that can save lives. If you or someone you know is interested in becoming a ResearchHERS ambassador, please visit our website at acsresearchers.org. Our website has also been added to the chat, and you can see it here on the screen. Please show your support by making a donation of any size to the Los Angeles ResearchHERS campaign. All dollars raised will go to fund women-led cancer research. And cancer hasn't stopped, and neither will we. With your help, we can sustain support of the best and brightest cancer research led by women. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelsey. And how fantastic to see Aaliyah's creative approach to raising money as an ambassador. So fascinating. I look forward to checking out more of her work. A big thank you to our host and gold sponsor, Cedars-Sinai. Special thanks to our distinguished panelists and researchers, Drs. Figueiredo, Reckamp, Kim, and Lawrenson. This marks the end of our first discussion of the speaker series, Conversations in and Out of the Lab, but there are 2 more to come. The next one takes place September 28th at 4 p.m. That one has a focus on women's health. Dr. Basho, Dr. Medina Kawe from Cedars-Sinai will join in that discussion. And then on November 18th at 1 p.m., the focus turns to cancer prevention. Dr. Rimmel and Dr. Vidal from Cedars-Sinai will take part in that session. Both events will feature speakers from other ACS-funded research, volunteers, and current campaign ambassadors. We certainly hope that you can join us again as we continue this conversation in September and November. And I want to thank you all for inviting me to take part in this conversation as well. NBC4 is a longtime supporter of the American Cancer Society here in Los Angeles, helping to raise awareness about this important cause. And if you're interested in learning more about ResearchHERS or you want to get involved, be sure to reach out to the local American Cancer Society staff partners. Of course, they will be reaching out to you as well after this event via email. So thanks again, everyone. I hope you have an outstanding day.